Nistha, how are you?
Hi, Daniel. I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. If my friends, you haven't already heard it, we already did one episode together on Nistha's podcast, which was called
Rising.
Rising. Fantastic. I knew that. I just wanted you to say it for extra emphasis. And if you haven't checked that out, that was absolutely amazing. And hopefully this can meet that on the same level of amazingness. So without further ado, we're going to have Nistha introduce yourself a little bit, and then we're going to start getting into our topic. So Nistha, introduce yourself to some of the people listening.
Awesome. Yes. So I did study psychology and neuroscience, similar to kind of what Daniel's studying. I just graduated back in May. So recently, with quarantine and having all this time to really kind of reflect and think about what I want to do, I was like, you know what? I really want to pursue my career of public speaking and life coaching and writing. So why not just delve into that? So kind of picked up a few things over the past few months. I started a YouTube channel, a podcast, started posting life coaching videos on TikTok, again, similar to what Daniel does. And just meeting new people, connecting with people. The reason I'm here today is because Daniel and I connected through TikTok. So it's been really amazing just establishing this community and really going after what I want. And honestly, that drive and that mindset is what got us to kind of this topic today, where we're like, we want to help other people discover their purpose. Because I feel like right now you and I feel connected to ours, even though it's on a very foundational scale of just being on social media, putting ourselves out there. It's still a big deal. It's still the baby steps to get your way up there. So we want to just share that with you guys, and we're really pumped to do that today.
I could not have said it better, my friend. So to get things going, so Nistha, we're all about purpose. So if we're in the brink of things, just to set up a foundation for the rest of our conversation, how would you define purpose? What is a purpose?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, I have heard things like this my entire life. Growing up, you hear things like life purpose, what are you meant to do? And I feel like people overcomplicate this idea so much and make it such an abstract thing. But I think purpose is really simple. I think it's just impact. What makes you feel powerful and how can you use that to impact the world? And it's usually something that we're all connected to, and that's why there's such like a force now to finding your purpose. That's such a thing. But I'm like, I don't think anyone has to find their purpose. I think we have to reconnect to our purpose, because I think with time, people stray away from it. I think subconsciously everyone knows what their purpose is, and it's your own, this is a term I really like, your own energetic signature. I got this from Catherine Zenkina. She is wonderful. She's the manifestation babe on Instagram. I always talk about her. You guys should totally check her out. But she said, everyone is put on this planet with an energetic signature. And that is why there is no sense of competition. You can't compete with people. You can't compare yourselves with people. The only person you can compare yourself to is yourself, because you were put on this planet for your own mission. And that mission is your purpose. So how would you define it?
That was a fantastic definition. I'll just piggyback on that definition.
Go
Me
for it.
too. No, because that was awesome. I really think, I love when you said it's, there's no competition in the sense of, everybody has their own purpose and it's so individualized, right? My purpose is going to differ from your purpose. It's going to differ from
Absolutely.
someone else's purpose. So I really think it's just one of those beautiful things that can tie into so many things like happiness. People have also heard, find your passion or find a meaningful life. And I think that is so, what's the word? There's so much overlapping material in the sense of, again, what is meaningful life for you? What is a meaningful life for me? What is happiness for you, as opposed to just the differences, the individual differences that are involved. So I completely agree, my friend.
Absolutely. I love it. And yeah, I wanted to ask you, because I know right now you are in college and you're in your third year. I got out of college recently, and for myself, I kind of discovered this whole idea of life purpose and what I'm meant to do very recently. I think it was really getting out of college that I was like, I cannot see myself in a corporate 9-to-5 job. It just wouldn't suit me, But now I'm interested in hearing your perspective. You seem so connected in yourself. How have you maintained that, being in a college environment where people around you are maybe still in a mindset where they are conforming to what society expects from them, or they're spending a lot of time with social groups or partying or drinking, and maybe not having conversations necessarily about career or purpose or their mission. I know for myself, I felt myself so distanced from who I was as a person when I was in college, just because that's the community I was surrounded by. So it took being out of that for me to even connect to my purpose. But I want to hear about you. How are you balancing that? How is that going?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. And by the way, I'm sure in like America, Canada, I'm sure it's like the same thing. I go to like the University of Victoria, but I think like university college is basically the same, right?
Yeah.
Same institution, educational institution. But it's a phenomenal question in the sense of, you see so many people who are, working towards a goal, and then you ask them, you're like, hey man, like what's the end goal? Where are you planning to go to? And you can tell. I'm telling you, I'm sure you can tell. You look at someone in the eyes, and you kind of have a feeling for what they could do, and then all of a sudden they go, hey man, I want to be a whatever it is, an accountant.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, okay. Now, personally, I always thought if it was a stranger, even if it was a distant friend, who am I to step in and say, no, you should be an artist or you should go into acting, right? It's not my place, even though you know what you should do and I know what you should do, but whatever, right? But usually if they're a close friend, I'm more likely to be vocal about my opinion, right? Where you see someone and what you think they could strive in. Again, I don't know you as well as you know yourself, so how much is that really worth? But really, my friend, I think the best mentality that I have to realize is I'm going to school in order to learn, in order to become educated, in order to become a person of value. What's important is everybody here is here to better themselves in order to reach a certain goal. It's really, really important that, when I share my goal with some people, some of them might not be very fond of it. Some of them might even tell me it's not a practical goal or that I should go choose something more safe and more secure. And what I really have to remember, and this is something that I've been working on, is to instead of look at it from like an insulting attitude, like, oh, you don't think I'm good enough, look at it from compassion. Because I'm thinking, you know what, for you to waste your breath, I shouldn't say waste your breath, but for you to say something is, hey, Daniel, I don't think that's a very good way to go. It means that you care about me, right? It means that you want me to succeed. And that's where you're telling me to go become an engineer or to go into medical school because you want me to succeed. If you didn't like me, then you wouldn't have said anything. I could be like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to go into the NBA. And you'd be like, go for it, Daniel. 5'7", get it. Yeah, you believe in you, right? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but man, there's so many ways you can answer that question. Yeah. Nistha, how about you answer your own question? You answer your own question, and then maybe I can think of something more.
Yeah. So again, kind of going back to where I was in college, I was so disconnected from what, I was meant to do. I think, so rewinding back to just growing up when I was little, I always enjoyed writing. That was my thing. I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed speaking. Literally, like as a child, I would speak to adults and they would ask my parents, like, oh my gosh, how is she so eloquent? How does she speak so well?
That's
Like,
so
is she
cool.
going to grow up and speak when she grows up? And, this would time and time again carry out throughout my life. Like, I would give an internship presentation back when I was in like high school and people would be like, oh my God, public speaking, that's your thing. And I was just like, really? Like, I don't understand how to make that a career. That's not like it doesn't fit into like a job position title typical type of thing. Like it doesn't make sense. It's not realistic, So I kind of brushed that off because society pushes you into this category of doing what's realistic, like what you said, like what's practical. And I think it pushes you so far out from your dreams that all those cliches that are like, if you believe it, then you can achieve it. Those seem so far-fetched and out there. But then where I am now with like just understanding, mindset development and law of attraction, I'm like, well, those are real things. Those cliches actually have meaning, but it's a reframe of your mind that only gets you to understand that. So for myself, this was something that I was aware of my whole life. I got to college. I was surrounded by obviously a social environment. So there were a lot of distractions. There was a lot of noise around me. There was a lot of talk of getting into the big four tech companies, second, third round interviews, polished LinkedIn profiles, ideal resumes. And that's the world that I got sucked into. And that was my fault. That wasn't anyone else's fault but mine. And maybe arguably that was a part of what I had to go through to get to where I am now. I also believe that. But I think being away from that environment, it was only March. It was when quarantine hit and like everything, the world turned upside down and they were like, yeah, your classes are going to be online now. Like you're not going to be in school. And me being an introvert and like socially anxious, I was like, let's go. Like I've been waiting for this moment. Like literally everyone was so sad because it was like our senior year. They're like, our senior year's gone. And I was like, you know what? Let's go. Like I'm going to make the most of it. So I really came home. I really analyzed, like evaluated all those conversations that I had with certain people and where I was and the offers that I had from typical tech companies that I thought I would have taken. And I was like, this just all seems so wrong. Like the more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt in my gut. And then for me, the transition was literally at home over quarantine when I had time to sit in my thoughts. And that's what led to YouTube. That's what led to the podcast, the TikTok videos, my nonprofit that I like, everything just kind of pieced together.
Wow.
And I wanted to address this as well. Like for myself, it was like a gut feeling type of thing. And I think this is the same for everyone. Your gut is like the most powerful. Like it picks up on everything. It's kind of like your overall compass in life. But people are so disconnected from their gut and intuition because they surround themselves with the noise. So for myself, I was so not listening to my gut all of college because I was in my head too much about who I wanted to be to appeal to others, you know? And then when quarantine hit, being at home, I was like, I don't care about any of that. Like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I need to care about what I think of myself. I need to redefine success. I literally, like, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, what is success to me and not anyone else. And I realized that I was on the wrong path for so long. And that's how now I'm doing everything without a care. I'm so confident in not going back to that path again. And that, you know, it reflects, like, in my body, it reflects in my aura and my energy. And those are things that, like, in college, I was always low energy. I was always drained, you know, and it was like a physiological thing. And now I'm like up and ready to go. I wake up every morning and I'm like, I can't wait to have this call today. Like today I woke up and I was like, yes, my podcast, like, let's go, you know? And it's little things like that where you wake up and you're genuinely looking forward to your day and your body has enough energy to boost you. I think that's so important as well. Just listening to your body, listening to what you already know about yourself. Um, so that's what I would say, you know, happened to me. I had to go through all of college being disconnected to ultimately now connect. And that's why I was kind of interested in hearing your perspective because I know you're still in college. So I'm like, how do you like balance that? Maybe you're just more connected with yourself and you hold your ground better than I did. I feel like I didn't hold my ground well enough. But I wanted you to answer that just to help the viewers out there who are in high school, who are in college, who are still surrounded by that environment, who may have dreams that are a little bit more ambitious or out there or not as acceptable to the general norms. Like, what advice would you give for them to just, you know, hold it together? What do you do? Because I feel like you're doing a wonderful job at it.
That's very kind of you. So first of all, thank you so much for sharing. I think you dropped a bunch of gems on us, a bunch of gold, especially the part where you said you're too much in your head thinking about who you're trying to be, which is great. But then all of a sudden when you say what I'm trying to be in order to appeal to others, it's like, whoa, like now we're getting into a scary territory, which is what many people go through, which is what I went through. And I feel like that's something that so many people can relate in that sense. You know, going back, if I was to go back to when I was younger, I remember it was around middle school. So when you were telling your story, I couldn't help but smile because I was like, man, I can hear so many similarities. I swear
Yeah.
to God, it was middle school, grade 7. My teacher, Mr. Edwards, I just did a presentation on something. And he looked at me, he's like, Daniel, you're a good public speaker. I was like, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Grade 8, again, teacher, hey, you're a good public speaker. And then I came to the point of where my math grades were terrible. Science was blah. My gym was good. I was good at gym. But
Yeah.
public speaking
Maybe
was my thing.
NBA isn't too far out. Who knows?
Right? But thank you. We're 5'7". We'll do what we can. But it was just at some point I was like, you know what, Daniel, I suck at a lot of things, but everybody has something that they're really good at. Public speaking is my thing, and I don't mean to sound braggadocious and arrogant. That's not like that. Everyone has a thing. My thing was just that. That's something where I felt I loved it. I loved the adrenaline. I loved being up there, the eye contact, the body language. Anyways, I'm preaching to the choir. You already know. So talking to a fellow, loving public speaker person, you go throughout high school, you're like, man, I'm good at this, but I never thought of it as a career, right? Because when you think to yourself, I like speaking in front of people, well, what comes to mind, right? Like entertainment, you want to be on a stage, like, are you going to dance or what, have a talk show? Like, what the hell,
Yeah.
and when people ask, hey, what do you want to do? My only mindset was like, well, I want to speak in front of people. And the people who, really cared for me, looked out for me, they said, well, Daniel, you want to speak in front of people, law is the way to go. I said, really? So yeah, you can be a lawyer, you can speak in front of a jury. I was like, well, I want to speak in front of people and I want to make good money. I guess law is the only option then. If it's between being a lawyer, doctor, and engineer, I guess obviously be a lawyer. So I was like, that's the way to go. So whoever would ask, even until last year, I would say, yeah, I'm going into like law. I'm just gonna
Wow.
do something random, at university. Doesn't matter what I study, just for a prereq into law school. And then I swear to you, I get to grade 11. I remember this so vividly. Mr. Chupoy, if you're listening or watching to this, bless your soul. And we get into his class. This was English 11, and we're doing these current event speeches. And I remember I go up there, I do a speech. We do one like once a week. And I remember after the first one, he kind of sits me down and he goes, Daniel, what are your plans after high school? And I go, oh, I'm thinking of going into law. And he just kind of bites his lip and he goes, Daniel, why don't you do something on stage? And I go, what? He goes, Daniel, are you sure? Like acting or like anything, something where you're speaking in front of people, like having a morning show, having a talk show. And I remember I looked into his eyes and I said, Mr. Chupoy, that's not very practical. And I walked away. But there was a deep part of me inside that just like reacted when he said that, because I felt like like that gut feeling that was like, yes, like, oh my God, like yes, like that's it. And anyways, it wasn't until I graduated high school, and like me and like many of my friends, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And it was a question of anxiety almost, because I knew I liked public speaking, right? I wasn't sure what the rest of my life was going to look like. I wanted to make money. Everyone's telling me the people who don't go to university and college, basically, if you're not in the 1% of people, you're going to end up homeless. That was the script. Yeah. That was the script, right? It was like, if you don't go there, I would say, well, what about YouTubers? That's the 1%. Well, what about small business owners? That's the 1%. And a lot of them, they're not wrong, right? It's not easy to be a YouTuber. It's not easy to be a business owner.
Yeah.
The majority of them fail. However, I think it's really, really important that, anyways, long story short, I get to UVic, right? And I'm learning about, again, psychology. And I'm like, whoa, like, I love this. I don't think I will love anything as much as I love psychology and mental health. I'm like, forget law. I'm just going to do this. And if I want to keep on studying, I'll just, study psychology in grad school or something, become a counselor or become a clinical psychologist, whatever. And this was good because it is societally acceptable because I'm still studying, I'm still in school. So that was easy. So whenever people ask, Daniel, what are you going to do? My immediate thing is like, oh, well, I'm studying psychology right now. I would love to do like coaching or counseling of sorts. I'd love to teach somewhere. But in my head, when I do that from 9 to 5, my other goals, well, then I'll go home and then I'll set up my own business. I'll do my own coaching. I'll do my own teaching online. So I make the curriculum, you know what I mean? And then I can write a book and I can do this and that. But unfortunately, you just get to a place where you kind of give people an inch, when they're like, hey, Daniel, like, what do you? So my advice to anyone listening to this who has an ambitious dream is be careful saying it to everybody. So you shouldn't, in my opinion, these are my 2 cents. So, hey, what do you want to do? Don't just blurt out your hopes and dreams in front of them. Maybe give them a taste. Be like, oh, you know what? I find psychology interesting. Or, oh, the options are open. I don't want to say anything right now because my mind will change. But as soon as I think of something, I'll let you know. BS, lie to them. Like, just don't, just keep it to yourself. You do you. But please do not think that the whole world is against you. There are people that also think the way that you do. Whether you got to reach out on social media, whether you're lucky enough to have family members or friends who think alike, that's great. But please, if you are in an environment where the people around you do not support your dreams, please do not kill it. Just put it to the side, guard it. When it's small, just guard it. Guard it, take care of it, protect it, keep it low, and I promise you're going to meet people who will help you water your flower, if you will, and turn it into a tree for you. So I hope that answered your question.
I love that. Protect that energy until it's ready to bloom. And what was the name of your teacher?
Oh, my grade 7, the first one who ever said it, that was Mr. Edwards in middle school. But the one who really put the cherry on top was Mr. Chupoy. Mr. Chupoy in grade 11. Chupoy.
Chupoy. Well, Mr. Chupoy, if you're watching this, I'm going to do the same thing you did last time where on my podcast, you give a shout out to Sharky. I'm going to give a shout out to you because I think all it takes is one conversation to really create that pivotal change and allow someone to skyrocket into their career. So you did it, even if that conversation you walked out and you were like, I don't know about that. You were thinking about it, planted a seed, right? So now you are where you are now. So shout out to you, Mr. Chupoy. We need teachers out there who recognize students, their potential beyond the classroom. Like what you said about your grades in math and science not being the hottest, I can so relate. Like there were times in high school where I literally went through mental hardships because I was just not doing well in my classes. And I think that's because I just didn't genuinely care. Like I was like, I could care less about like being in like some advanced calculus class. Like, why am I doing this? I'm taking this because everyone else is.
Exactly.
I have not used math since that day. Like, will probably never be using it in my career except for like maybe finances with my business, which like someone will be guiding me there, like I'm never going to use like the Pythagorean, like none of it will be.
I completely
agree. And so all it takes is for a teacher to sit you aside and be like, this is the spark that I see in you and I want you to chase it. And I saw it happen in one of my science classes in high school. My friend was like so talented in art and she drew, I'm forgetting what she drew, and she would always bring it to school. She'd always just draw. And like our chemistry teacher came up to her and she looked at it and she was like, I really think every student or every individual has their unique spark, their unique thing. And she just looked at her drawing and she was like, this is yours. She like really kind of gave her that compliment. And she wasn't like the best in chemistry. She wasn't the top of our class, but I'm like the fact that the teacher looked beyond her grades, just who she was as a person, what her purpose could be. I'm like, that's huge. Like that is going to give a student so much self-esteem. And if I had a teacher who looked at me then and did that, because yeah, sure, like I had people compliment me when I would go up and speak, and this would be outside of school, this would be maybe like in school, like adults, parents, when I did debate, whatever. But if I had like a classroom teacher, like a straight like math, like algebra, science, history teacher come up to me and be like, this is what I see in you beyond what we're learning in class, it would have been everything for me, But because I equated my value at that point to just my performance in those classes, I was like, wow, like I'm worthless. Like I don't feel confident in myself. I don't feel like I'm, at the same level as my peers around me. But my whole life, I had always been told that I, was a topper at everything. I was a high achiever. I was an all rounder and I was so good at everything I did. And then I get to like high school and then all of a sudden I like fail an exam and I'm like, everything just goes down the drain. Like the first time I experienced
Mm.
failure, I didn't know how to deal with it. And, um, it's more of like a mental health thing, but at the same time, it's like if I had a mentor or a teacher who could just see straight through like my vision and who I was and my character and just sit me aside and be like, none of this matters. Maybe it matters right now, but in the long run, it won't. Sorry, my AirPod fell
All
out.
good, all good.
Still hear me?
Yeah, yeah, all good.
Awesome. So if I just had that, I think that would have been so different for me. So I really like that's awesome that you had that. That's amazing. And I think more teachers should be like that.
I think so too. I think I really lucked out. Now, Nista, I really, really want to talk to you about how come when you know it deep down, you can still walk away from your purpose. Like if like just off the top of my head, when I gave you that example, and as I was visualizing myself, and he's looking at me and he's telling me exactly what I want to hear, and I look at him in the eyes and I go, no. But I'm lying to myself, not only to him, but to myself. How is it, Nista, that people can, I don't want to say lie to themselves, like consciously, maybe they do it subconsciously, but how does that work? What do you think triggers that? Is it fear? Is it insecurities?
100% both. So kind of in my last podcast, I think we talked about the ego versus the intuition. So
Mm-hmm,
your ego is
mm-hmm,
the, kind of control center of the mind. It's all based on fear. It's always acting in survival mode. So it's kind of acting upon your insecurities. It's trying to make you feel like you're financially secure, you're emotionally secure, people around you accept you. And then your soul or your gut or your intuition, call it what you will, but that's the one that's always trying to get you to grow, always trying to get you to become your best self, no matter what anyone thinks. So at that moment, yes, for you being in grade 11, like having a teacher say that to you once, having it resonate, but then having all of your peers around you, maybe not all, but majority of just people you surround yourself with being like, no, I'm just going to become like an accountant or an
mm-hmm,
engineer or a
mm-hmm,
doctor or a lawyer. To you, your ego or your mind already was in that state of survival mode. It had become habituated and accustomed to hearing that. So in that conversation, you were just like, no, that's not practical, because you had conditioned yourself to believe that, and your ego was overpowering what you knew about yourself. It was overpowering your intuition and your gut feeling. And I think that's perfectly normal, because I think most people carry themselves throughout their whole lives letting their mind overpower their gut. I don't think any one person out there is 100% one or the other. And I think that's why humans can experience things like gut feelings. And also humans can experience things like fear, no matter how spiritually evolved or enlightened you are, or how, much on the other end of it you are, where you don't even believe in like the idea of spirituality or a soul, and you think everything is by coincidence and you act only off of logic in your mind. You still have gut intuitive feelings. You still have things that you cannot explain, no matter how hard you try. And I think, part of the human journey is kind of being in this constant state of flux between both. And the more you get in tune with yourself, the more you meditate, the more you journal, the more you practice mindfulness, the more you read and surround yourself with the right people, the closer you're getting to your intuition. But the further away from you are from that, the more you're latching onto your mind, which is based off of fear. So I think at that stage in your life, I don't want to speak for you, but in that moment when you were in the conversation, you were like, no, that's not realistic. I think you were just coming from that place of fear, which had already become accustomed to hearing that you made that a reality for yourself. I did it too. I all throughout college, I thought of public speaking the same way. And it was so interesting when you were talking about the whole like how you were like, yeah, I'm going to go and get a master's and become a counselor, because like that makes sense. I'm a psychology major, so obviously I have to get a
mm-hmm,
master's,
mm-hmm.
because everyone says if you're a behavioral science major and you're not going to med school, you have to get a master's. Like, obviously, how else would
Mm-hmm.
life work? And then with that master's, I mean, you have what, A, B, and C, like become a counselor, go into
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
academia, teaching, or go into research, right? Those are your paths.
Totally.
So for myself, yeah, like I literally studied psychology for the same exact reason as you. I never saw myself being like a therapist or like a licensed counselor, but I was like, I love psych, like solely for that reason. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And in high school, before I got to college, I would find myself literally reading books about like the brain and behavior. And I was like, this is awesome. And I would just read about it in my free time, and like literally like no like 16-year-old kid just does that, but I was like, this is awesome, like I want to
Yeah.
delve into this, I want to learn more about this. And, you know, I had so many people throughout college be like, oh, so you study neuroscience, but you're not pre-med. And I'm like, yeah, no.
Mm,
And
mhm.
they're just like,
Wow.
but like, how? Like, how? You're just not pre-med? Like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I love what I study, and I can say that confidently, and I know 90% of the people in college can't. So there must be something I'm doing right, even though I don't have that, you know, cookie cutter path already laid out for me. Like, okay, no, maybe I'm not going to med school, or maybe I'm not going to any health profession school, for example, or maybe not even grad school. You know, I didn't know what I wanted to do at the moment, but I knew that what I was doing in that moment, I was connected to with a passion. It was coming from my heart, you know, and there were so many people I saw around me that were like, oh, I chose this major just to get a job out of college, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, you did that, but you're asking me what I'm going to do with my degree. And I actually enjoy what I study. So it was like this weird paradox of like, am I in the wrong, or am I just crazy? Like, I don't know. Either I'm doing something right or I'm absolutely absurd. So it was like a constant battle in my mind where I was like, I love what I do, but I can't rationally think of a career path to put it into. And then it's the same exact thing as you, where I was like, I've always been told I was good at speaking, but I didn't know how to make that a career. Like, what does that look like, you know? And then I think only recently, and this is like shout out to like technology, literally this day and age, with like seeing people like Haley Hoffman Smith. She's the 20, I think she's turning 24 soon, like Forbes speaker, made the front cover as an influential speaker,
Well,
has given 2 TED Talks, published 2 books. Like literally, I think she's doing what you and I aspire to do at this young age. And I'm like, there are people who are making that work, you know? And she came from, I think her background was in entrepreneurship.
mm,
So, you know, not necessarily directly related. I know she has a business now, but it's like there are people who come from backgrounds where they study something different than what they're doing. And what they're doing as a career is more of a skill than a whole like
mm.
4 years of content or like some sort of vocational degree, you know? So I think seeing people like her, there's Jess Ekstrom, who's the wonderful. She's 29. She's a motivational speaker, travels around the world, speaks at Fortune 500 companies. I think she's literally living in like an RV and traveling the world with her husband, like amazing.
Wow.
And then Catherine Zankina, who I mentioned earlier, she's 26, already is a millionaire now, manifestation babe, teaches people how to manifest, went to school for like a science degree. So I'm like, you just see how far people come and how those, you know, what society throws out to you with like, oh, okay, well, if you have a science degree, you have to get, you know, further education. You have to go to med school or grad school.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, these people didn't do any of that. They just did what was right for them. And they didn't listen to anything. And they stuck with that gut feeling of what they knew was true to themselves. And now they're next level successful, such a young age. They're all in their 20s. And I'm like, that is the example and bar we should set for students who don't feel like they can relate to having a typical major or a typical degree, or going down a, you know, a standard route of here's what I'm going to do exactly with this degree and how I'm going to apply it into this job. Because I think you and I, just from this conversation, I could tell could never relate to that.
Yep.
You know, we're
Yep.
trying to make ourselves fit into it time and time again.
Mhm.
And then I think it's just breaking free of those limiting beliefs. I really thought like my GPA would equate to success. Now I look back at that and I laugh, and I'm like, I want to help kids know that that's not the truth. That is solely a limiting belief. And sure, like I get it if you want to become like an engineer or a doctor, obviously med school does look at that. There
Of
is
course.
some sort of like, I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard. I'm not saying you should just totally slack off and like take advantage of the fact that law of attraction exists. I'm saying everything requires hard work, but to the extent where you're sabotaging your dreams for the sake of having a polished, perfect profile on paper, that is so not worth your mental health or time or energy.
I'm so happy you said it, my friend. I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really want people to know that. I wish I knew that when I was 18, you know? That would have changed everything for me if I was aware that everything that I was choosing to believe in was a limiting belief that was like restricting my reality. Because now it's like a whole new world for me when I realize that like my belief literally shapes my reality. I'm like, well, I can believe in whatever I want then.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's true, you can. And I have
Mm.
conversations with friends who are like, so like, they think manifestation is so like abstract. They're like, well, I guess you can only manifest like certain things, right? Or like, oh, manifestation doesn't work all the time. And I'm like, sure, maybe, but like, don't counter it as a challenge. Like, learn about it, learn how to use your mind to shape your reality, go explore it, study law of attraction. Don't take my word for it fully, you know, go do your own research. But I have people who like have such like restricted mindsets about it when they have conversations with me. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be like a debate sort of thing. It has to be, I want you to learn, you to use your own period of self-discovery and growth, see if it really applies to your life and it's working for you. And then we can come back and have a conversation. But I want to teach that to kids, where it's like, your mind is so flexible. Like, we teach neuroplasticity in our psychology. Like, we've learned that in psychology, right? But no one talks about the mind and how it's separate from the brain. And your mind creates the reality that you're living in every day. So
You're
crazy.
completely right, my friend. I really think it is the beliefs. It is, if someone believes, oh, that manifesting stuff doesn't work, I can show you the best PowerPoint. I can give you the best presentation of my life. If you don't think it's going to work for you, it's not going to work for you.
It won't. Yeah. Incredible.
It sucks because I feel like, Nistha, it's almost like we're drawing a line between, well, the people who've, like, I don't want to say have figured it out, because I feel like we keep learning, we keep learning, we keep evolving, but the people who have sort of kind of like found their path, right? And then you see your friends or people who you care about, who you're like, oh, like, I'm not going to say I'm always right, but it doesn't look right, man. Like, you could be so much better in this field, or you'd be so much better there. And it's weird because it's like at what point, is it our place to say anything, or even if we say everything, it's like, it's about their belief. Like, if they really don't believe that it's their thing, I can't change your mind.
Absolutely. And I know that's like kind of what I've been struggling with lately, with like certain, situations I'm in with friends or even like my family members. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I know you as a person, I know what you're good at, and I want to see you succeed in that, because you would be thriving, you would be happy, you wouldn't be under the state of like stress or bogged down by, I have to meet expectations X, Y, and Z to please whoever. You would just be totally liberated. And I see that. And it goes back to what you said, like, you can't convince someone of something that they're not even open to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I have been in a situation. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, go for
Wait,
it.
actually, you continue your thought first, and then I'll.
I was literally wrapping that up, so I would go for it.
Yeah, is that okay? Okay, sorry. Just right when you're talking, I remember, I have had this more than once happen to me where I'm talking to a friend, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, man, like, why don't you go into like blah, blah, blah? And then they look at me in the eyes and they go, well, that's not practical. And then literally I see myself talking to my teacher, like, oh my God, like I can tell, like when they say it, I'm like, there's an ounce of you that doesn't believe the words that just came out of your mouth. And it's crazy because I can't push that idea any further. But like you said, if I just plant that seed of just having that conversation, like, okay, sounds good. Maybe a year, 2, 3 years down the line, he can come to that conclusion on his own. But it's like, it's so crazy because you see people who will look at you and be like, I don't know, it's not really safe. And it's like, do you believe that? Or is that what the people around you are telling you? Or
Yeah, it's like, who is putting those beliefs in your head? Because as children, we don't have those beliefs, right? Like, we're playing pretend with like mermaids, right? Like, anything is real when you're a kid. Your reality is so malleable. And then as you grow up, like, who's putting these thoughts in your head of what's real and what isn't? Like, who is to tell you that? And I agree with you. It's like, is it even our place to tell someone like, oh, I think you should not be doing that? Because like, you care about them and they're your friends, but like, they are also on their own journey, just like you and I were on ours. And I think our turning points were, like, they happened with different scenarios. I think your turning point was your conversation with your English teacher. My turning point was having time to sit with myself over quarantine. And then like reflect on everything that I had done in the past where people complimented me on speaking. And I was like, there has to be something there. I can't just brush that off to the back burner and then sit at a 9-to-5 tech job. Like, I can't do that. That's going to keep bogging me down. And then I think for the people who are still in the mindset of like, I have to do this because it makes sense to other people, I think they just have to go through that experience and have that realization on their own, and no one can tell them otherwise. Because I can tell you, like, sophomore year me in college, if someone had told me now, like, oh yeah, like, by the way, you should just do public speaking full time, like, you would be great at it, you're not going to go to grad school, you're going to start a business, actually, like, I can so see you doing that, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, I don't know the first thing about how to start a business. I like am already not doing well in school. I don't feel confident about my GPA. I'm so out of touch with like who I am. Like, you're telling me I'm going to be like successful straight out of college and like be following my dreams. Like, that would be so out of the roof for me. And now I'm just like, that was a reality that I was choosing to stay in because that's what I was surrounded by, And I think it was one of those things where like I always knew that I felt left out in like friend group situations when they would talk about like grades or talk about career, talk about certain things. I was just like, I cannot relate to these people. Like, I can't relate to them talking about their like third round interviews at Google. Like, I don't want to do that, And they would all be like so into like career planning and who their connections are on LinkedIn and, you know, what they're doing to polish their resumes or interview tips. And I was like, why do I not? I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care
Mm-hmm,
about those
mm-hmm.
conversations. So I thought I was just unmotivated and I was just lazy and I wasn't going to be successful. But little did I know I was just not connected to myself, because if I had been at that point, by now I could have, you know, I don't even know what I'd be doing. I don't know where I'd be, but like, I think it just took me time to get to that end goal and that destination on my own. And thankfully it happened sooner than later. I didn't commit to anything and I have time now to really discover that. But it's a learning process for everyone. And I also don't think that everyone, and this kind of like is touching on more of a spiritual perspective, but I don't think everyone in this current lifetime that they're on even necessarily connects with their purpose or enough
Right.
to the point where they pursue it, you know. And I really think that not everyone is at that point in their spiritual growth yet. I think everyone has to go through their own journeys. And this is like, again, if you believe in the idea of multiple lifetimes, I personally do, but I think that each like time that you're here on this planet, it's a separate learning experience. And for
Mm.
people who are achieving their goals and who are going after what they want and not listening to society, I think they're at the place where they're open enough in their like soul growth to even acquire that, you know, or even be at that
Mm-hmm,
point of
mm-hmm.
like understanding. I don't think everyone will reach that point of understanding, and that's okay. I mean, I think that's like just a part of where they're supposed to be, but I do think that what you and I are doing can empower those people, plant those seeds sooner, hopefully get them to use free will to start going after what they want. I feel like that's what definitely my purpose is.
That's why we do what we do.
That's why we do what we do. I love it.
That's awesome, my friend. That's awesome. I'm especially I think whenever we talk about purpose or meaningful life, like that is just it's something that everybody tries to find, right? At all different ages. This guy picked the perfect time to do some lawn work.
You
Anyways,
know, not really. I can still hear you well and
oh,
clear. You're good.
fantastic, my friend. But yeah, you know, and I think you know it's really it's tragic almost. Like I love that you're more accepting of it. Whereas for me, it's like, oh, dude, like you're 45, and you still haven't found your purpose. You still haven't found your passion. Like, ouch.
Yeah, I feel like I I phrased that in a way where I sounded very like it's okay, but no, it triggers me, and I think it triggers me because I think for you and I, our purpose is quite similar in helping others realize
Mm-hmm,
it
mm-hmm,
through empowerment. I feel like I can. Wow, now there's a truck driving by my house, but
mm-hmm.
but
uh,
no, it bothers me. It bothers me. Like I see family members who are approaching like close to retirement, and I'm like, why are you still in this job? Like I know you're so good at this particular skill. That's what you've always like, that's what you talk about when you go to work. You talk to your colleagues about, those particular topics. You talk about it at home. But then why are you in this career, in this job, just because it's safe, when it's so like worlds apart from your passions and the things you speak about in your free time? It very much bothers me, very much frustrates me. And I think with the whole acceptance thing, I'm starting to slowly get better at accepting it, because I realize that like the more it bothers me, like the more resistance it's going to create in allowing me to even help those people get to that point. And then it's just going to bug me. But those people are sitting like carefree, doing whatever they have to do on a day-to-day basis, probably not even engaging these conversations of like, am I connected to my purpose? Like they're probably not even asking themselves that. But I'm sitting here like frustrated that they're not, and it's like taking a toll on me. So I've learned to just like, kind of disconnect myself, let people kind of go on their own journey. I'm going to be here doing me, have these conversations with me when you want. But until then, I mean, we're all kind of learning. You and I are still learning. Like 10 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
who knows what kind of mindsets we'll have. Hopefully it's similar. I like where we're at now, but it could change. It could change. We could be open to a lot more perspectives. And I mean, we're so young. We have so much more growing to do. So,
Definitely. Nistha, my friend, what do you think is your biggest strength at this point in time?
ooh, wow. Thank you for reminding me. I was going to ask you about your, how about we start with that? I was going to ask you about your exercise that you talked about on TikTok, where you write, I believe, what is it? There was like 180.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
There was
yeah,
a number
totally.
of words you used to describe yourself. I wanted you to introduce that, the purpose of that exercise, and then I'll go into mine.
All right, definitely, we'll do. So, to anyone listening or watching this on YouTube, one of the biggest, most impactful motivational books I've ever read in my entire life. Actually, let's wait for anyone watching this. Let's grab that. It was. The 15, I guess you sing this backwards, but it was the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John C. Maxwell.
It's forward.
Yeah, have you read it?
No, I was saying that it's not backwards though. I
Oh,
can
it's not
read.
backwards. Oh, fantastic, good. But yeah, my friend. So basically, the biggest thing that this book talks about is reflection. And it was just call it luck, called it miracle, called higher power. I just read this at a point where I didn't really know who I was. Right? We know that when we're younger, peer groups are a big thing. We're trying to fit in. We're trying to conform. And then after that, you're really trying to figure out who are you? What are your values? What do you believe in? Anyways, I read this book, and one of the assignments in this book, because I don't want you to think that like I came up with this on my own, was write down 100 words to describe yourself. 100 separate words on a piece of paper or in a journal. And in the paragraph below it, it said, hey, listen, we know that 100 is going to be a lot, and you're going to try to wuss out and only write 10, but write 100. And the goal, I think, what Mr. Maxwell was saying here was he was saying, hey, not only do I want you to name the conscious things, but I want you to pull things from your subconscious. I want you to pull things that you maybe didn't even know about yourself. So I sat there, I think for a good, man, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just, writing everything down, everything from anything that you believe about yourself, funny, clumsy, I don't know, reliable, cares, whatever it is. So you write all those things down. And the purpose of the exercise was, to better get to know yourself, think about the things that really mean a lot to you. And then based on those characteristics, it might be easier for you to choose, maybe like, let's say a career path of sorts, or even in relationships. So that was the exercise. Now, Nistha, what is your biggest strength?
Okay,
Was there
cool.
something
Yeah.
that I missed? Was there something that I missed explaining it there?
No, that's perfect. I was just curious before I segue into that, what were like the top three things that you wrote down just to
Oh
describe?
man, top three? Goodness. Okay.
Or even off
Hmm.
the top of your head. It doesn't have to be from that list, just right now. Because like
Okay.
I wanted you to introduce
Right
that.
now? Yeah, for sure. The top three that I definitely wrote down was one of them had to be confidence. Another one had to be kindness. And finally, I think this was kind of like I don't know if this was like a cheat one, but I wrote down like the 100 things that I love about myself, and I wrote down character. Now, character is kind of one of those things where character can like represent a boatload of things, But I was thinking character in terms of like my ethical values, like my values as a person, and like my mindset of like what is right, what is wrong, things that you will never do, things that you pride on doing. So I think character was definitely the one biggest one, with very, very close confidence and kindness.
Hmm. Okay, awesome. I love that. And I still have yet to do that exercise. I had never heard it before until your TikTok. And
Yeah,
I was like,
no
I really
way.
want to do this because I want to see what comes out from like the subconscious. Not like
Yeah,
the things
yeah,
that I would say in a job interview to describe myself, but really when I'm sitting with myself,
yeah. Oh
what is
yeah.
the 90-second word that comes to mind? So I would
Hmm.
definitely do that. But I would say for right now, I think my biggest strength would be probably my work ethic. I think that's something that and I think the reason I say work ethic is because I also wanted to say when you asked me that question, I also wanted to say like confidence in my path, like just confidence in where I'm
Mm-hmm,
going, and that's what
hmm.
leads to work ethic being the hard skill that I feel just the most like this is my thing right now, like kind of out the park. Like that's what I'm good at. I'm hustling every day. I have a routine. I'm sticking to it. I'm very motivated. Like my drive, because in the past, like when I wasn't connected to myself, like I always thought that I had a poor work ethic. That's just because I was unmotivated and I wasn't motivated and I was lazy just because I didn't care about the things that like school was assigning me to do. I didn't find myself resonating to like standardized assignments that I would have to do over and over again, like every week, and then get like a score out of 10. I was like, this is not driving me to study. Like, I'm sorry, and I would see people
Hmm.
around me who were like, I just made like 100 flashcards for the next exam. I'm studying like Monday to Friday. Like, they have a whole routine set. And I'm like, how do they do that? Like, am I just lazy? Am I just unmotivated? And now seeing where I am now, people are asking me for productivity tips. They're asking me for work ethic tips. They're like, how do you create a routine? How do you stay consistent? And I'm like, that itself is the skill, that's the output, but the input is just me being connected to my passion and purpose. It's me being connected to my
Hmm.
power of like, this is my end goal. I want to empower people to find their purpose, get out of their comfort zone, recognize their power. And I will do anything in my ability and in my power to get there. And that's what's like allowing me to have this work ethic. And the only things that I'm engaging in now, the conversations with peers that I'm engaging in, the passion projects that I'm doing every day, the movies I watch, the books I read, the part-time activities I take part in with like, taking walks or working out. Those are all things I enjoy doing. Like, I'm not doing meaningless like workouts just to do them. I'm not reading books just because everyone else is reading the same books. I'm reading books that I'm like, that appeals to me and I want to read it. I didn't just start a podcast because I'm like, this would be a good like networking idea. I started a podcast because I'm like, I love speaking and people should listen to, you know, some of the ideas I have to say. And things like you and I are doing, like I'm able to network with people who are like-minded and share our message to the world. So it's like, I'm no longer doing things just because society expects them from me. I'm doing things where I feel like I can provide my power and my impact. And that is what's allowed me to develop my work ethic. So, like, when you first asked that question, I almost just wanted to say, like, just belief, like belief in myself. Like, that is the skill that I've perfected. And then the outputs of that are various things. Work ethic is one of them, sure, but also happiness, my ability to communicate more openly. I've gotten better at confrontation and saying what's on my mind because I no longer let like things kind of, you know, like I no longer overthink things and think like, oh, will this be too dramatic to bring up in conversation? Or, you know, what will this person think of me? I'm like, no, I don't have that mindset anymore. So it's affected my life in various different ways. But I think the core thing that changed was just me believing in myself and in my path.
That is such an important thing. Like I guess like this whole podcast has really just been about that, right? The confidence
Yeah.
that you need to have to believe in yourself, right? To take a chance in yourself. It's like, oh, what do you want to do? You know, what are you going to do if you don't go into if you're not pre-med? And you're like, I don't know, but I have the belief in myself. I have confidence in my future self that it will work itself out. And I think that is such a powerful thing to be able to say and mean to say and mean it.
And mean it. Yeah, that's a huge thing. And like I can say in college, I mean, I would say it, but I was definitely very shaky in my confidence. When I thought about my post grad life, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, if I really don't, you know, if I'm not going to do research, I'm not going to become a counselor or go to, like, what am I going to do? Like, am I really going to start a business? Like, it seems so far fetched. And now I'm like, nothing is. Like, it's far fetched if you believe it is, right? And if you put yourself into the bubble of like, this is the reality I want to believe exists, and this is the only way to be successful. But there's like 1,000 different routes to success. You have to find the one that aligns with your vision and your purpose. And this again goes back to Catherine's and Kina. I just love her mindset reframe has totally changed the way that I see like my success in my career. But
Wow.
said that your strategy has to be based off of your vision. So many people are like, oh, that person has this sort of mailing list offer, whatever, on their website. So that's the way I need to set it up. That's the format.
Mm.
Or, you know, this person started a YouTube channel and a podcast, so I need to do both. But it's like, no, you need to do what aligns with your purpose and your vision, you know? I can say for myself, like I find now with doing podcasts, I find myself feeling so much more energetic and fueled and powerful than I ever did when I was on YouTube and I was sitting in front of a camera trying to say the same thing again and again and like fixing my expressions,
Mm.
face and
Mhm.
doing my makeup. I was like, that would just drain me at the end. And maybe that's like my gut telling me, hey, don't stick with YouTube. Switch over to another platform, you know? When I do TikTok, I feel energized. I don't feel drained. When I'm right now, this conversation, it's like, I don't know how long we've talked for, maybe close to 45 minutes, but it's great. I don't feel drained at all. So kind of going back to where I was saying, like what I was saying, there's so many different paths to success, but the strategy that you take has to just align with your unique vision. And you cannot compare that strategy to anyone else's because their vision is different. So it goes back to the whole thing of energetic signature, doing what's right for you and not having a sense of competition. And I can say that that sense of like comparison is so cutthroat in a college setting that I think that's partially what drives people away from their purpose and what they're meant to do. And I think honestly, like everyone needs some kind of like crazy eat, pray, love spiritual retreat to themselves. Like mine was when I went to Spain, you know, I was there and I was like, I cannot come back and do this tech job. Like I can't. And then quarantine, I think, was a part two, like a continuation of it, because I came back from Spain, then I went back to school. Like we talked about this in my podcast. I went back to school and I was surrounded by the same environment. Kind of went back to square one where I was like, oh, maybe I should be applying to those jobs. Like that is what's safe, you know, my mindset switched back. And then soon enough, quarantine hit within like a month and a half of me being back. And I was like, nope, no. Remember what you told yourself in Spain. Remember what, you know, Elizabeth did in Eat, Pray, Love. Remember like all of those scenarios and just go after what you want, because the universe will not fail you if you're going after what you want. It will always have your back. I highly believe that.
I believe it too, my friend. I sincerely believe it too. And Nista, I completely agree with everything you just said. The one point that I really want to make sure I also emphasize for people is I don't want to give them like this false dilemma fallacy in the sense of I don't want people to think it's, oh, either go to school or drop out and follow my dream. Guys, for a lot of people, you can do both. And what I mean by that is, and this is something that I've heard from Gary Vaynerchuk say, it's like, hey, listen, maybe you're in a position where you're 40, you've got kids, right? You've got a spouse, if you can't just drop everything, risk it, right? You're not young like us, you know, you don't have parents looking over you in a sense. So do this, maybe go to your 9 to 5, make sure that you're paying for the groceries, make sure that you're paying for rent. And then from 5:30 till 11, work on your passion. Start setting up your website, work on your coaching skills, work on whatever it is that you want to work on. And then part two is we'll do them both. You know, can you do this part-time, do this part-time? And then hopefully, if you've worked hard enough, if luck is in your favor, if you've put the effort in, eventually your passion can take over your full-time gig. What do you think about that?
100%. I talked about this in the second episode of my podcast where I brought up Jay Shetty's example. He did his 9 to 9, so he worked his day job at Accenture. He would come home and literally just teach himself how to make YouTube videos and edit until 2 a.m. every single day. Soon enough, blew up on YouTube. Now he's insane. He's the Jay Shetty, like has his podcast, his book, his YouTube, his business. He's traveling, like he did his whole monk thing, you know, and maybe that was I know that for him was his spiritual retreat, you know. His turning point was that when the monk came to speak at his school, because he thought he was just going to become like an engineer or a lawyer or a businessman. I think that's what he thought. And the engineer, or the monk, sorry, two very different things, came in.
Yeah.
That was his turning point when he was like, wait. And then he did his whole like retreat. He was there for 3 years, and then he came back and he did his 9 to 9, and then he did the side stuff, and that took over. YouTube took over, and you know, he is where he is now through that. And I was watching literally an episode of Shark Tank yesterday where this lady came on, and she's so successful. She's married, she has kids, she's an ophthalmologist, so she 3 times a week literally performs surgery on patients. And then she also had this dream of starting like a hair care business. She made hair curlers for women that were like super unique. This girl is incredible. So she didn't really know the know-hows and ins and outs of fashion. So she took a semester of fashion school while being an ophthalmologist. Wow. Just to learn how to like sew, learn like manufacturing terms, to be able to take her product, make it for her hair, and then allow herself to basically connect with the right people, like the right manufacturers who work in hair care, to be able to like actually communicate in the terminology of like fashion design. So she learned all the terminology through her 1 semester of fashion school while having kids, while performing surgery 3 times a week, and then now launched her product. I don't know how long ago this episode aired, but I was watching it last night. I'm sure it was a rerun. And she, you know, got an offer immediately. Like all the sharks were so excited. I have never seen before on that episode all the sharks being that excited. Like no one, wow, you know, challenged her in any way of, no one found a weak spot in her business model. No one challenged her in any way. No one was like, oh, I'm not interested, I'm out. Like everyone was just edge of their seats, like in awe of this woman. And so yes, 100%, like not everyone is connected to themselves at this age at 20 years old where they have the privilege, or even if they are, not everyone has the privilege of, you know, their parents being like, oh, we got you, we'll support you while you go out and hustle.
Yeah.
There are people who have to, you know, pay the loans and the bills and everything for their families. So I think at any age, regardless of if you're 40 and have kids, or, you know, you're 16 and you can't even afford to go to college, I think it's a matter of doing both and really balancing both. And those are going to be some hard years. It's going to take a lot of grit and sweat. But I think if your mind is at the end goal and your belief is there, no one can take that away from you, you know? 100%.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Now, Nistha, I asked about your biggest strength. I have to ask, what do you think is your biggest weakness right now?
Right now, that's a good question. I would say my biggest weakness, I think, so when I first got into like doing all the projects that I'm working on right now, I read this thing, either read or I watched a thing, but I remember like this very clearly in my mind. I have it in my notes saying, be a producer and not a consumer. So instead of constantly like trying to find, or like constantly scrolling through TikTok and watching other people's videos or watching other people's YouTube, you know, channels or reading other people's blogs, like start producing, start making your own content, start putting yourself out there. And I think what I did when I started like doing all of that as I went on overdrive with like my content and putting my stuff out there, then now I feel like I am really not a consumer. Like I feel like I don't take the time enough as I would like to sit down and properly just like be intentional and mindful and listen to a full
Mm.
episode of a podcast of someone else's, or be intentional in watching a full YouTube video that, you know, someone I would have generally binge watch put out recently. Or even like with books, I would read books nonstop as a child and like finish it end to end within like 2 days. Now it takes me forever to even like get across a couple pages. I'm like, well, that's
Mm.
enough for today. Like, let me go start hustling on my stuff. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what I'm struggling right now is with balancing being more of a consumer and being more mindful when I am consuming things, and really like forgetting about pushing all my thoughts about what I have to do for the rest of the day to the back, and being like, let me just sit down, carefully read these pages, take notes on this content, or watch this podcast, take notes, really soak in the information, and like, you know, give value and give time and intentionality to what other people are putting out too. So I think right now what I would like to work on is definitely balancing and taking a step back for myself.
Good, my friend. Good. I think it's really, really to be aware of, not just what you're doing well, but things that we can always improve on. I think that's a way that can help us become so much better than what we are.
Yeah,
And
well,
I can definitely relate. Me and my friend, well, I think what you said, I think that was very, very good. I think sometimes I forget that, like, oh, just because I'm doing my own things, doesn't mean I should stop reading, or doesn't mean I should stop, listening to podcasts or this and that. But I think easily the biggest thing that is hard for me to find right now would be, honestly, it's weird, but I feel like my biggest weakness might be undervaluing what I have to offer. So what I mean by that is I've spent so much time over the last 2 months looking at these fake motivational speakers, right? The people who are 20 years old offering you a $3,000 course on sale for 1,500 because they really like you, but get it fast because there's only 2 courses, right? Like just some BS, right? Where you spend money for a course that you could have gotten that same information for free on YouTube. And
Mm-hmm.
my biggest fear is taking money from someone and then it being a ripoff, or or like me ethically knowing that I'm ripping someone off. And I feel like my weakness is, if you do it too much, it'll be a stage I'll be like 39, I'll be homeless, and you're like, oh, Daniel, like, are you ready to share your message? No, I'm not ready yet. It's not good enough to charge people money for. You know what I mean? Like you're too much now. That's my worry. My worry is that I feel like it'll never be good enough to breach the gap of like, oh, I'm doing it for free for podcasting, doing it for free on YouTube, but bridging that gap to where I take money from people in order to do like actual counseling or actual coaching or actual speaking gigs. That there's that concept in psychology. Was it the Dunning-Kruger effect, or what is it? Where like you get into something, you're like, wow, I'm amazing at this. You're 2 3 years in, you're like, dude, like my advice, it's not bad advice, but it's not revolutionary. I'm not making up new things by the day. Right. And
Yeah.
I feel like my biggest weakness is I have to make sure, because I know for a fact I won't overdo it. I'll never be able to rip someone off because just ethically, like I can't. I'm more likely to sabotage myself and not start charging people student. But that's my biggest weakness, that I overdo it, unfortunately. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'm sort of in a similar boat where I haven't started charging clients yet. So I really do want to do coaching, and I want to come out there. And I think that is actually something I'm struggling with, because I was talking to friends about it and I was like, I don't know how to make offers. Like, I don't know what
For sure.
offers,
Yeah, you don't get taught this in
you know?
school. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, exactly. You're not taught this in school. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how good I am. Like, okay, people tell me I'm good because yeah, I'm confident in putting out free content on TikTok. But like, if someone's paying me money for me to actually coach them and show results and track performance, like
Now there's pressure.
there's pressure, and like I have to up my game, and like, am I there yet? So I've been having the same war in my head pretty recently of like, I don't even know where to begin with charging. So I only recently dropped a LinkedIn post today where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to step out of my comfort zone and do this. And I had a
Good for
friend
you.
walk me through it. Thank you. And she was like, just put this basic fee, like she kind of helped me through like
Good.
numbers and all.
Good.
So I just went out there. But yeah, I mean, the real growth I think will be in just my own performance and seeing how I can improve as a coach, and seeing like, am I providing value with this money, and am I coding it with the right price? Is it too high? Is it too low? Because I think it's that, like you said, where's the bridge between being fair to others but also being fair to yourself? Like, you deserve
Mm-hmm.
compensation for the work you're doing.
Of course.
You deserve to believe that you are talented, and you deserve the compensation too. But then, at the same time, like you said, those like limited time offer deals that are like, at the end of the day, rip-offs. Like I
Yep.
never want to be a salesy person like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think with those things, it's more about building like a strong, solid community with branding. I think it's about marketing the right way, making your captions authentic, being as personable as you can with people so that they, when they talk to you, it's not a transactional thing. Like, when you see those limited like time offers, like half off for you today, like, that's false, first of all.
Yep.
That's yes,
Yep.
they're telling everyone that. Like, who are they trying to fool? Um, so it's like, I don't know. I think with law of attraction and being authentic and being true to yourself, you won't ever have to be at a point where you put numbers over your purpose. I always say this. I
Mm.
always say purpose before numbers, and I always say vision before anything else, vision before money, purpose before numbers. If your vision and your purpose is the utmost thing that you are going for, everything else will follow. The followers will follow, the money will follow, the fame, whatever you want will follow materially. But what you have to put out to begin with has to be authentic. So I would say don't spend too much time stressing about the numbers. Maybe like talk to some like coaches here and there, figure out what they do, take some tips from people here and there, but don't sweat it too much because everything is a learning experience. And regardless of like however much we start with, wherever our coaching businesses go, you and I we're both going to make mistakes and we're both going
Of
to
course,
fail,
of course.
learn and grow. So I think it's starting out with that initial basic fee and working your way up, but also like staying true to yourself as you're doing it.
That's great advice, my friend. That's absolutely great advice. Hey, Nistha, my friend, is there anything that we didn't talk about in terms of purpose, in terms of awareness, finding yourself that you really wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I feel like we did hit a lot of gems. Like we
Mm-hmm.
got to the good stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, I
yeah.
think we talked about physiologically, literally how your gut responds when you are doing the right thing or you're not. We talked about just listening to your intuition more. I guess this we can maybe leave off with what advice would we give to people out there who are struggling to make the leap of faith and just follow their goals and listen to their intuition, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
no matter what age. I was going to say to college or high school kids, but to any age, like what is one thing we could leave off by telling them today?
The first thing that came to mind, and then I would love to hear your answer, is I think taking ownership for your life and realizing, hey man, if you go to school and if you go into a job that you don't really love, you have no right to put that hate on your friend or on your parents for pushing you that route because you chose to go that way. I know that can be an escapism, right? You go to school because the underlying thing is like, oh, because I want to make my parents happy. You have no right to be upset at them. I'm a huge believer in, and my friend Ray Naman told me this. He's like, Daniel, nobody can make you do anything. They can influence you, they can guide you, they can persuade you, but at the end, you pull the trigger. So it was you who signed up for those classes. You know what I mean? It was you who studied and did the exams. And I would say, just remember that your life, for a lot of it, for the most part, is in your hands. And if you're really thinking about taking that leap of faith, just remember that at the end of the day, I don't want to get too dark, but man, other people might not be around, right? If you're doing this for your parents, there's going to be a day where they're not going to be around and you're going to be by yourself. And you're going to have to take a long look in the mirror and go, okay, am I happy with what I've done? So really take ownership of your life. That is my 2 cents that I would give on that. But what do you think, Nista? What would you say?
Yeah, awesome. That's really important. I feel like that advice is so valuable, first of all, because I've never even thought to the point of like just taking ownership for the now, taking accountability
Mm-hmm,
for now.
mm-hmm,
Some people are in situations where they're like, oh, like why is this my life? Why did I do this? But it's kind of like a series of conscious decisions that led to that. So you can't put that blame on anyone else. I think that's super valuable because at the end of the day, that's advice that people can use today. What I was gonna say is I think there is this whole like when people talk about going after their dreams or their goals, they're always like, yeah, well, one day I'll start this. I had someone comment on one of my videos the other day being like, wow, like that's amazing that you're doing all of this. Like you've accomplished so much. I want to start a blog too. And I was like, you got it. Like start your blog today.
yeah.
And, they replied and they're like, yeah, maybe one day, like maybe soon. And
No.
I would say that too. Like, when I was in high school, I'd be like, one day I'll write a book, one day. But it's like, when is one day?
Mm-hmm.
Literally start today. And like, I think I would emphasize this. Celebrate the small wins. Celebrate every step of the journey. Start today, whether that's literally in like creating a website logo, like not even the website, create like a fun little name for yourself on Canva or like a little logo or, if you have a business idea for a product, maybe just sketch it out on a piece of paper. Start with something small, but once you have that first step that you take today, you're going to be in the thought process and the momentum to just take tiny steps every single day. soon enough you'll have, you know, a product launch and you'll have a first client. Celebrate that first client, celebrate that win. Don't be too headstrong on like the end goal. Just be intentional in the process, be intentional in the now. You know, be grateful and be thankful for every little opportunity that comes your way, whether that's a person, that's an opportunity, that's a lot of views on one video. You know, celebrate those small wins and don't compare those wins to everyone else. But start today. That is my advice. Like for all of the people listening right now who are like, one day I'll do this, one day I'll be a teacher, or I'll be an actress or a model. Like, what is holding you back from taking that step now? And again, like the whole, like, I don't want to be dark thing, but even applies to you and me. Like, we might not be here tomorrow. Nothing is
Mhm,
guaranteed
mhm,
and time
mhm.
isn't guaranteed. And I was having a conversation with my mom about this today, and I was like, I think everyone should live life as if today is like your last day. Like, literally, what impact do you want to have on the world? And how can you start working towards that today? It doesn't have to be anything crazy because everything takes time. But the whole like excuse of I'll start later, I'll start another time, you know, I think that's, at the end of the day, I think that's, you're just being unfair to yourself. You're not giving yourself the recognition and the love that you deserve to even put out whatever product that you can into the world, or whatever impact you can have into the world. So it's not even it's not only unfair to society, it's also unfair to you to be like, oh, I'll start one day and just continuously push
Mhm,
it off while
mhm,
doing
mhm.
X, Y, and Z, engaging in meaningless conversations with people you really don't care about,
Yeah.
being involved in toxic social media drama, going to your day job that you absolutely like despise,
Ugh.
having coworkers that, you know, yeah, like literally you like you look disgusted. I'm like, same. Like, start today, because if you can create the reality you want, but when is the starting point? When is today?
You're totally right. Start right now. What's holding you back? Chances are it's you.
It's you, exactly. Nothing is holding you back except for yourself. You know, people will have excuses. People will say, well, time and money and this and that. I'm like, it's yourself, you know. Nothing truly holds you back like your own mind. So it's all about the reframe.
I couldn't agree more, my friend. I couldn't agree more. Hey, Nista, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so
Thank you so
much
much.
for
Thank
coming
you for
on here.
having me. I love this. Wow, we've been talking for a while, but this was great.
Yeah, it's crazy. I kind of just like let it flow. I was like, should there be a time? I was like, no, let's just,
No,
see what happens.
I feel like everything we covered was pretty valuable. So I love that. I appreciate being on here today.
Of course, thank you. Now, Nista, if people want to reach out to you, if people want to find you online, what are some of your social media handles?
Yes, so my Instagram is my first and last name, Nistha Dube. It's kind of weird to spell, but I'm sure my name will be in the title podcast, so you
Mhm.
can find me. My TikTok is the same thing. My YouTube is literally the same, my first and last name. Oh, and then my podcast is Rising on Anchor and Spotify. So
Sweet. Now, Nista, are you doing any coaching at the moment? Are you accepting any new clients right now, or not at the
as
moment?
of today, literally as of right before this podcast, I made my first ever like LinkedIn post advertising it. So if anyone is listening and wants mindset development coaching, feel free to reach out to me. I'm basically just like helping people kind of like overcome limiting beliefs to really create a mindset that ultimately, you know, shapes the reality that they want. So yep, I'm doing like an initial free consult. So just we'll chat, talk about our situation and work from there. So
Sweet. So even if they're not sure, they can just do a free one-on-one talk, seeing if you're right for them. And
absolutely. You
gotcha.
can always DM me on Instagram. I always reply. Just feel free to reach out to me.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nista. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching on YouTube and for listening on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and all those other fantastic places. My name is Daniel. This is Nista. This is the Danial Teaches Experience. Have an absolutely sensational day and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye, guys.